I've always been obsessed with the unknown. Since I was a kid, I've been fascinated by urban legends, ghost stories, and anything that whispers of the supernatural. It wasn't long before I combined that passion with my love for filming and started my own YouTube channel. I called it the Urban Legend Explorer. It was a simple concept. I traveled to abandoned places, haunted sites, and locations tied to local legends, documenting everything I could find. The channel started small, but as my footage became more compelling, my subscribers grew, and soon, I was making a decent living off of it. Over the years, I'd explored countless creepy places, haunted asylums, forgotten mansions, and remote forests where the stories of strange occurrences never ended. I had seen some weird things that I couldn't always explain, but nothing truly terrifying. It was more about the atmosphere, the tension, the thrill of possibly encountering something paranormal. But I always went home afterward, reviewed my footage, and realized that despite the eerie feeling in those places, I never actually saw anything. That was until I went to Japan. Japan is rich with urban legends, stories that have been passed down for generations. Some of them are harmless, like the tale of the Zashiki Warashi, the playful spirit of a child that brings good fortune. But others darker. Much darker. My viewers had been begging me to go to Japan for years. They wanted to see me explore the country's haunted spots and dive deep into its terrifying folklore. I'd heard plenty of stories, but one in particular always stood out to me. The legend of Kuchisake Onna, the slit-mouthed woman. For those who aren't familiar, the story goes like this. Kuchisake Onna was a woman who, in life, was horribly mutilated by her jealous husband. He sliced her mouth from ear to ear, leaving her with a grotesque, permanent smile. After her death, she became a vengeful spirit, wandering the streets at night, wearing a surgical mask to hide her deformity. She would approach people, usually alone at night, and ask, "Am I beautiful?" If they said yes, she would remove the mask, revealing her disfigured mouth. She would then ask, "How about now?" If the person screamed or said no, she would kill them. If they said yes again, she would still kill them. But sometimes she'd leave her victim alive, only after cutting their face to match her own. It was one of Japan's most infamous urban legends, and it terrified me. But of course, I was also intrigued. So, after months of planning, I finally booked my flight. My first few days in Japan were incredible. I visited all the famous haunted spots. Aokigahara, the suicide forest, the Oiwa shrine, dedicated to a vengeful spirit, and even Hashima Island, the abandoned battleship island that was said to be cursed. But none of these places gave me what I was really looking for. They were creepy, sure, but nothing out of the ordinary happened. The locals, however, kept mentioning that if I was truly brave, I should explore the outskirts of the city, places not on tourist maps. These places held the stories that weren't talked about as much, the hidden spots where few dared to go. That's how I found myself on the outskirts of a small city one night, filming in a rundown neighborhood that had been abandoned for years. The area was almost a ghost town, crumbling buildings, overgrown streets, and an eerie silence that blanketed everything. I was walking through a narrow alleyway, filming the decaying structures, when I noticed a figure in the distance. At first, I thought it was just a homeless person or maybe another explorer, but as I got closer, I realized something was off. The figure was standing unnaturally still, facing away from me, wearing a long coat and what looked like a surgical mask. The alley was dimly lit by a single flickering street lamp, casting long, unsettling shadows across the ground. I stopped filming for a moment, watching her from a distance. There was something wrong about the way she stood. It was too still, too rigid, like she was waiting for something. My heart began to race, but my curiosity got the better of me. I hit record on my camera again and slowly walked toward her. "Excuse me," I called out, trying to sound calm. "Are you okay?" No response. She didn't move. I hesitated for a moment, then took another step forward, my camera focused on her back. "Hello?" Still nothing. I moved closer, now only a few feet away, and that's when she moved. Slowly, deliberately, she turned around to face me. My breath caught in my throat. She was wearing a surgical mask, just like in the stories. Her long, dark hair hung limply around her shoulders, and her eyes were cold, empty. She didn't speak. She just stood there, staring at me. I could feel the tension in the air, the same eerie stillness that seemed to wrap around us both like a suffocating blanket. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I had to know. I had to see if it was real. If she was real. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to remain steady. Am I beautiful?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost gentle, but there was an edge to it, a darkness that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. This was it. This was the question from the legend. I knew what came next. I'd read the stories 100 times, heard the warnings, but now I was living it. My mind raced, trying to think of the right answer, but no matter what I said, I knew it wouldn't end well. I was trapped. There was no way out. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I managed to force out a shaky yes, barely louder than a whisper. She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes narrowing. Then, slowly, she reached up and pulled down her mask. Her mouth. God, her mouth. It was exactly like the stories. Her lips were slashed from ear to ear, leaving a gaping, jagged smile that stretched across her entire face. The skin was torn and twisted, the flesh around her mouth raw and glistening in the dim light. Her teeth, sharp and blood-stained, glinted in the flickering street lamp. She tilted her head slightly, her cold eyes locked onto mine, and then she asked the second question. "How about now?" I couldn't answer. My throat was dry, and my body was frozen in place. Every instinct I had screamed at me to get out of there, to turn and run, but I couldn't move. The camera in my hand was still recording, capturing everything. Her face, her eyes, the twisted smile. She took a step closer, her head tilting even more, as if she were studying me, waiting for my response. My mind raced, trying to find a way out, but I knew it didn't matter. I knew the stories. No matter what I said, she would kill me. If I said yes, she'd still cut my face to match hers. If I said no, well, I didn't want to think about that. Finally, my body reacted on its own. I dropped the camera and bolted, sprinting down the alley as fast as I could. I didn't dare look back. I could hear her behind me, her soft footsteps echoing in the narrow passage, but I didn't stop. My heart pounded in my ears, my breath ragged as I ran, desperate to escape. I don't know how long I ran or how I found my way back to the city. By the time I reached the main road, my legs felt like jelly and my lungs were burning. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting her to be right behind me, but the alley was empty. She was gone. I never went back for my camera. The footage is probably still there, sitting in that alley somewhere, waiting for someone else to find it. But I don't need it. I don't need the proof. I know what I saw. I know what she was. I haven't been back to Japan since. I've stopped exploring altogether, actually. The thrill is gone. What I saw that night, the slit-mouthed woman, it was real. More real than any ghost or urban legend I'd ever chased. And I learned something that night. Some stories are better left untold, because sometimes they're not just stories. Sometimes they're waiting for you.